So good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by the Institute of Water. My name is Katie McGinn, and I'm delighted to be your host for this session. And today we're exploring an important and timely topic, the Streetworks UK Material Classification Protocol, which came into force this week on the 1st of October. As many of you know, under environmental agency requirements, all excavated waste must now be classified. This new protocol introduces a risk-based assessment approach developed by Streetworks UK members and approved by the EA to help professionals like you manage excavated waste efficiently, accurately, and sustainably. This session is designed for everyone involved in street and highway works, from utility providers and contractors to project managers. We'll cover practical insights on compliance, operational efficiency, digital tools, and collaboration. We're fortunate to have a fantastic panel of speakers with us today. So we have Mark Whitaker here, who is the Head of Works Quality and Management Systems at Cadent. We have Lucy Mason, who's the Strategic Projects Director at Scube. And we have Vince Nwana, Transformation Director at Scube as well. They'll guide us through the protocol, explain its practical applications, and answer all of your questions at the end of the session. Before we begin, a quick housekeeping note. Please keep your microphones muted during the presentations and use the chat box to submit any questions. We'll aim to address as many as we can at the end. And with that, let's get started. So I'd like to hand over to Mark to kick off our session and give us an overview of the new protocol.
Thank you, Katie. Morning, everyone. So I'm just going to start off by give you a bit of a history of how the Streetworks UK protocol came about. We'll go background to 2018 when the first RPS came out. And we'll talk a bit around legislation, so it'll be a bit dry in terms of how we're going through this. And as we develop the conversations, we'll bring in Vince and Lucy to help out and understand how it's actually working in the real world. So if we start off, there's a waste management regulation called Waste Management 3, which requires all utilities who excavate in the highway to classify that material before it's disposed of or recycled for reuse. Back in 2018, the Environment Agency understood that utilities cannot always fully comply with that legislation, partly around the noticing of when we have to go out and do work. So WM3 generally is for major works activities where we know well in advance what we're going to be doing out in the network, so we can go and do trial holes up front before we actually do our physical work on the asset. Most of our utility work around maintenance, small repairs and new connections, it's short duration, short notice work. So WM3 doesn't work for that type of activity. So what the EA did is they released an RPS, a regulatory position statement called 211, that allowed utilities for those smaller types of works to move material without having it tested or classified. And that really helped the industry there in terms of flowing material from customers' properties to recycling centres and landfill and so on and so forth. In 2019, Streetworks UK were challenged by the Environment Agency to come up with a better way of classifying this material, because at the moment everything was being deemed as inert, non-hazardous, when we know for a fact that that isn't the case across the country. So the Streetworks UK looked with its members and contractors at what we could possibly do differently. And there was a group of people put together, a working group led by James Fortin and James Camis at the time, who came up with an idea of how we potentially could use a Streetworks risk assessment approach. The Streetworks UK process was over 3 phases. It's taken 7 years to complete this. And then, as we said, it went live 1st October. So I'll take you through a few steps in terms of how we got there. So 2019, we were challenged with coming up with a new solution. So phase 1 looked at the volume of work that was being done across the country and the amount of potentially hazardous material that we could find or identify. So phase 1 had a group of members of Streetworks UK join up, follow a procedure to take samples out in the highway, have them tested in the laboratory, and then the results come back in so we can understand of the network across the country, where are we finding hazardous material and what is that hazardous material. And as you can see on the slides there now, popped up, 17% of the work that we've been finding had some form of hazardous waste in there. So that was great. That gives us an indication of the potential problem, but what it didn't give us is the solution for how we're going to classify it when we're doing our minor works activities, our maintenance, repair, and so on and so forth. COVID hit, and then we had a bit of a break, and we picked up this process again later on in 2021. The back end of that, phase 2 was developed with the Streetwitch UK team, and they put together a proposal for a desktop risk assessment approach, a site assessment approach, and a sampling approach. And all those three were combined to give us a classification. So again, similar to phase 1, the teams and the contractors and the groups who were involved in phase 1 went out, followed that process, and at the end of it, produced a report that went to the Environment Agency. The findings from that phase were interesting. We found less hazardous material then, and the site assessment and the desktop risk assessment was only accurate for around about 50% of what we was doing. That was shared with the Environment Agency, and whilst the process of what we was doing seemed to work in principle, the accuracy of what we were doing wasn't good enough. At 50%, it just wasn't suitable for the Environment Agency. So we were challenged then to go away and have a look at the process again and see what we could do to improve it. And in 2023, we've agreed with the Environment Agency what that process would look like. And what we did behind the scenes was we looked at the desktop risk assessment question set, we looked at the site assessment question set, and we fine-tuned them to give us a better accuracy in terms of what we're assessing. We also did a slight change where we decoupled the desktop from the site assessment. So in phase 2, they were joined up, and the overall result from that classified it, whereas in phase 3, the desktop risk assessment doesn't impact what the team's doing on site, which was critical for us. So once that phase was completed, the results were shared with the Environment Agency again, and it was finding around about 10-11% of hazardous waste across the country again, which mirrored phase 2. And it also increased the percentage of accuracy from the 50% to nearly 83%. We had several organisations well over 93% accuracy. So we know that the protocol was fit for purpose and would work. And after a bit of to and fro between Streetwitch UK and the Environment Agency over fine-tuning the actual final requirements in terms of the agreement, it was approved in January 2025. That gave us a window of opportunity then of 6 months to implement it across all our businesses. And you'll have known since January now, we've all been full steam ahead, educating our teams in terms of what they need to do out on site, in terms of new ways of working, building IT systems in the background to manage all this new data, setting up contracts with test houses and UCAS labs to be able to test this material for us. And then again, working with Streetwitch UK in terms of webinars and updates and how we're all going to develop this going forward. So that is a very quick, brief description in terms of where we've been. And I'll give you a bit of a view in terms of what's looked like from a client side in terms of cadence with all this work that's been going on. So luckily, I've been leading for Streetwitch UK on this, so I'm with this every single day, day in, day out. But for my organisation that I work in, it's educating the teams who will actually be digging in the highway has been probably our biggest difficulty. Changing ways of working is hard. Implementing new stuff is quite easy because it's new to everyone, but actually changing mindsets of what they've been doing for years and years is very difficult. So at Cadent, what we've been trying to do is message the teams for the basics. And the basics for this Streetwitch UK protocol is segregation. If we don't segregate material correctly out on site, we have an issue because you can't classify that material. So messaging segregation, not only at the dig stage, but also as we transport that material across to the receiving sites for them to be able to manage that material correctly. We also have been pushing the need for improving the paperwork that's been captured. So a lot of these days, we all use digital systems to capture data, and they help us massively. Flowing data end to end in a digital system is by far the best approach to this protocol going forward. But currently, the way we work across the industry is when we find waste, we classify it and we record it on a piece of paper and give it to a waste receiving site. That piece of paper isn't always the best across the country. So what we've been trying to do is educate our teams in terms of what is actually required on that documentation, not only to ensure that we're legally compliant, but also that we are making it visible to those receiving it that they know what's coming into their sensors so that they can manage that material correctly as well. And if we get that data and information correctly on that paper, it'll help us going forwards with any potential issues where people don't understand where materials come from or the classification of it. So they're the main focus that we've been on with at Cadent. And obviously we'll talk around IT systems that we've been developing and working to put in place as well. So in terms of the change from the client perspective as well, the fact now that we've got a clear protocol that it distinguishes WM3 work for all our major works activities and then a proper structured approach to our minor works activities, it makes it very easy for us now to deal with this. As I say, in terms of these minor works activities, we do a simple desktop risk assessment, or our system does now, it does it automatically for us. Our site teams fill out a few questions on a digital device. That classifies material, and then we provide that information to our contract partners who come and collect that material for us. So that process now for us, it hasn't changed much in terms of what we're doing out on site, but the data that we capture now is improved and it's in real time as well, so that we can capture the data, provide it to the people that need to see it and understand it, and then we've got all our records as well for when we get audited and checked. So whilst we've all been doing a hell of a lot of work in the background to get this implemented and educating our teams, for those who are behind a bit, there can be consequences to this, and relaying these consequences to businesses, whether it's commercial or whether it's your teams, it's difficult to explain the difference between this week and what was going on previously. So legislation's always been in place. We should have always been complying with it fully, and we've not always been able to. This Street Works UK protocol will now allow us to fully comply with the legislation, and we'll also be monitored against it. So consequences of not complying with it or providing accurate information to waste receivers, it could be many things similar to other types of non-compliance around, NERS work. It's improved plans, fixed penalty notices, prosecutions. But with the Street Works UK protocol, because it's regulated by the Environment Agency, there's a risk that if you are not at the level you need to be in terms of accurately monitoring and recording this material, that you will be removed from the Street Works UK protocol. And for those organisations, that would mean reverting to WM3, which was the whole issue of why this protocol was designed in the first place. Because if you were removed from protocol, you'd have to leave your material on site outside the customer's property, have it tested, wait up to 6 weeks for results to come back in, and then move it. And it is just not feasible. So the importance that's been stressing in Cadent and to all Street Works UK members is we need to get this right. Otherwise, you'll be back to square one where your material will be left on site. You'll have customers not happy. You have highway authorities charging overruns. So it is really important that the accuracy of our assessments are where they need to be. So with that, that's a background and a bit of a view from Cadent with how we've been dealing with it. I'm going to pass you over now to Lucy, who's going to talk a bit around WM3.
Thank you, Mark. So talking about WM3, as Mark has said, it's not new for us. It's been a requirement to follow since 2015 in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. And it places a duty on you to classify your construction waste before it's removed from site. The removal of those RPSs now leave you with two choices. Firstly, adopt the Street Works UK protocol for your immediate minor and standard works. Or secondly, you can choose to follow WM3 for all of your works. And this will mean 100% testing for all of your works in the way that Mark has just described. And the protocol dictates that planned major works, except those that are major for traffic management purposes only, must all follow WM3. Many companies then classify those waste elements by carrying out trial holes before the works take place to reduce the risk of the operational delays that can ensue. It's also worth saying, of course, that we know that the EA are going to spot check sites for compliance. And with the onset of this new industry protocol, it's now probably more important than ever to make sure that you're following the requirements because they are an absolute duty for everybody. So the process diagram on the screen there looks straightforward. You identify the waste, you sample and analyse it, interpret the results, and then document, transport and dispose of the material correctly. But each of those steps hide a lot of complexity. There's lab tests, there's paperwork to keep on top of, and there's delivery constraints that can come forward as a result of not getting it right. And that's where a lot of companies feel a strain. So in the table there, it shows you quite nicely in summary that following WM3 is duty, and the benefits of it, and following it well ensures that you are compliant, you've got transparency, consistency, and you can have some cost savings if you classify correctly. But there are challenges and risks. So correct classification avoids fines, but the process is complex, and it will need expensive third-party providers for sampling, analysing and testing materials. Audit-ready records are needed and give transparency, but in reality, without proper organisation, it's an administrative headache with spreadsheets and PDFs scattered everywhere. And consistency is the goal, but quite often governance slips into more of a tick box exercise that needs to be managed. And yes, the right disposal route saves money, but if you misclassify, then you either overspend or you risk prosecution. And that's exactly why the industry has welcomed the Streetworks UK protocol. It's a more flexible, standardised way for utilities and highway authorities that allows works to flow in a way that prevents a lot of operational burden and cost. And this is important, Streetworks UK the new protocol doesn't remove these challenges, it shifts them, and that's where I want to take us next. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So first of all, there's a people burden. So companies are either hiring more environmental specialists or back office staff, or they're pushing responsibilities onto existing staff, like the field staff. But let's be honest, the field engineers just want to fix the leaks or repair the assets and get off the road as quickly as possible. Secondly, there's a process burden. So Streetworks UK is still process heavy, relies on sampling, field tests and paperwork. And this can mean inconsistency can creep in if people are rushed or if they're untrained, and delays can occur if things don't flow smoothly. And then thirdly, there's the compliance burden. So we know that the Environment Agency has made it clear that they will be doing spot checks. And that means that you need an audit-ready record of every decision. And right now, most companies are relying on paper spreadsheets or ad hoc systems that make audit trails really hard. So the protocol is a huge step forward for us to enable us to fulfill our duty, but it doesn't solve those people, process and compliance challenges that we've just spoken about. And that's where Scube system comes in. So I'll hand to Vince to share a little bit about what we've done there.
Thank you, Mark and Lucy. We've really approached the challenge from a first principles perspective. So what we are essentially doing here is adopting a risk-based approach to ensure compliance. And at the end of the day, we're looking at our staff and ensuring that our staff are not exposed to this material, to hazardous material, and we want to make sure that they go to the right places as well. So what we've done is ensured that we have a digitization strategy that is able to inform people as quickly as possible, all the way from when the jobs are being planned in the back office down to when it's going to the waste recycling center. So we have digitized the desktop risk assessment, which is the very first part of the protocol. And the whole idea is before you even send people out and to go and do the works, you want to be able to see whether there were previous samples that had been collected from the area, which we can get directly from Street Manager. or you want to do some of those other assessments that will help. Doing checks on systems like was there a gas holding site there before, or was there petrol station around there, which means it could have seeped into the soil and made it hazardous. So even before you send people out for work, our systems would have been able to very quickly do that identification for you. Typically, I think utilities are prepared for this by increasing their staff levels, or as Lucy said, getting the existing staff to go in and do these assessments manually. And I think when you did the time and motion studies for doing that, it was about 10 to 15 minutes per desktop risk assessment. So the digitization of that gives you the ability to do that automatically for all of your works. And, given that we're talking about environmental type challenges, doing that is an environmentally friendly way of doing it. You're not relying on people doing it and putting it on paper to dispatch it further down to the field staff. So, using digitization around that just gives you efficiency, where as soon as a permit comes in from Street Manager, you already have that done. And more importantly, you are able to send that down to the job pack so that the people further down the line can use it. Then you move on to the site assessments. So the site assessment, most companies will already have field devices that they can configure the solutions on. We also have a field device that does that, but I think what we try to do is start looking at how you can link all of these together. So even if you're using your field devices, we're able to bring everything into one place so that you can link up the desktop risk assessment with the site assessment to start giving you the traceability. So as you go further down the work stack, you're able to see how things link together. You can start seeing how the assessment of the desktop exercise maps with the site assessments as well. Further down the line, you've got the sampling. The sampling, again, the ability to be able to link the field staff with the actual sampling agencies and the test houses is a big thing. At the moment, I think, as Lucy and Mark said, you're likely to have companies downloading things into Excels, sending emails around, and then trying to track those, and that becomes a whole large back office logistics exercise. What we've done is the ability to link the samples back to the actual excavations that are being dug and back to the permit. So we're looking at a full chain of custody from when the works were planned all the way through to when it was site assessed and when it was sampled. And the sample results come in. We have the ability for the test houses to be able to put the results back against the original works. So that eliminates all the fragmentation that you would have in a typical utility. And I think more importantly as well, we start looking at the downstream activity. So that's all the work that has happened in the field. Ultimately, what you want to do is for the waste to go to the right place. And if it's going to a recycling center, to be able to kind of get rid of the hazardous material in there before going to its final place, then we want to make sure it's gone there correctly. And what we have in the solution is being able to attach the right chain of custody documents into the consignment note, which is what goes to the hazardous side, or into the waste transfer node. So all of a sudden we have a fully digitized process from when it was when the works were planned all the way down to when you're going to your recycling site or your waste site, saying I can trace everything back. So I can trace it from when it was where the hole was dug, it was hazardous waste, and it's gone in there, and everything is tagged correctly. So for us, the key was not just meet the protocol from a point of view of ticking the boxes that we've done it. It was from a point of view of the spirit of the protocol is around ensuring that you are identifying the waste and you're treating the waste appropriately, and you're treating it as quickly as possible. So you want to make sure that people dealing with it knows the quickest approach of doing it. We are also getting ourselves into a situation where we are pushing the right level of detail to the grabs. So what we are doing is if you were to assess a desktop assessment and you see this potentially hazardous waste in there and it's tagged as red, we can inform the grabs to just be aware. It's not necessarily the fact that it will be hazardous, but they start getting a sense of awareness that they could be planning to go to a site that has got potentially hazardous waste. And again, once we get the field assessments, we can organize the grabs to know so that they can have a more efficient way of collecting it. And we kind of optimize the amount of distances that they go around to collect the waste. So we're really implementing this from that spirit of minimizing the environmental impact of what's being done around this. And the final thing I just want to say around that is we have the burden of showing compliance to the Environment Agency when they come round to see whether we are adhering to the protocol. There are two elements around that. So first one is if the Environment Agency is doing a spot check, you want to be able to very quickly show them there and then that you are complying by showing them traceability around your desktop risk assessment, your site assessments and sampling. But you also have a quarterly reporting schedule, which needs to be adhered to. And what we have is if you have a single system where you can link every single part of the protocol together, then it's a very simple job to prove to the Environment Agency that you've been adhering to it. So digitization has really helped us in that regard, and it's something that I think if we had the industry adopting the same type of approaches, then it gives us the ability to be able to improve our throughput of works that we have. So that's me.
Thank you both. So as Vince said, in terms of digitizing, and we talked around the protocol and how it's changed for us out on site, being able to bring different elements of our systems that we've already got in place into this central system has been really key for us in terms of getting ready for go live, which was on Wednesday. We're going to talk now around what the next steps are for the protocol. So we know it's here, it's in place now. We've got probably 3 months now to really get used to how it's being implemented and how the Environment Agency are going to monitor this in terms of their teams out in the field, checking what paperwork looks like, checking that people are segregating. And then after January, we'll be in a situation where the EAA will probably do some formal auditing of the processes across the country. And that'll probably start at recycling centres and landfill centres in terms of paperwork and how they're managing the material that we give them. After that, they'll probably then start looking around the country at open excavations that they see in the highway in terms of looking, are we segregating correctly and so on and so forth. So we've got a really critical 6 months or so to make sure that we are compliant as best we can with this. With the Environment Agency, they've been really open and honest with us in terms of how they're going to police this. And they know it's a big change for us all, and they know it's going to take time. So it's best endeavours. We're trying our hardest to comply. So as long as we're demonstrating that we are on a journey of full compliance, then I'm sure we'll be fine with this. So for the protocol, the next steps are, it's been landed, it's all been signed off and agreed. We've now got something that is consistent across the country. It's standardised. We're all working the same way. So systems-wise, we'll come on to it again in a minute. It's great for us all now because we can blend data together. It's all in the same format. It's all correct in terms of what we need to provide to the Environment Agency. So that is a big win for us across the country. Where the protocol could be improved and will be improved is around the testing element of it. So at the moment, all testing that is taken from our excavated material is sent off to UCAS labs to be formally tested. And where we really want to be in the future is using rapid test kits out on site, whether that's physically on site with the teams doing the testing themselves or it being brought back into a depot and tested. That will help us with increasing potentially the volume of samples that are tested and improving the accuracy even further. So it'll be a project at some point with Streetworks UK and the Environment Agency, similar to what we did in phase 2 and phase 3. We'll do a phase 4 with rapid testing to compare rapid test results against UCAS test results. and then see which devices and which kit and which procedures we can use to use that rapid testing. There'll also be a further development of the Streetworks manager system that we talked around in terms of central register. So whilst the Streetworks manager system won't change in terms of how we put results in there, the data that's captured is going to grow, and that's going to help us with our desktop risk assessments. Now, as Vince mentioned there, that Scuba put a nice product in there that allows the desktop risk assessment to be done automatically based on a permit that's been raised or private works that have been raised in there. The system will give you the outcome based off the information that it looks at. And one of the parts of information that's looking at is Street Manager for known results that have come back. And those results will either be green, hazardous, or red, non-hazardous. And at the moment, that map has very few samples in there. So this 1% frequency of sampling that we're doing will start to populate that map more and more. And then, over the next 4 or 5 years, that map could be a full map of the UK of known areas of hazardous material and known areas of non-hazardous material. That will not fix the issue for us if that map's fully populated. We'll still need teams to do site assessments. What we are looking to do is only sample from areas where we get a desktop risk assessment as a high risk. So things like that we will look at, but that's going to take time, and we can only do that once the data is in the systems and we're starting to work with it in a correct manner. There'll also be opportunities for people to have input into this protocol. So, as we start to work with it, there'll be lots of scenarios in different sectors of how we operate out in the networks. And water will have something completely different to gas in terms of how they're managing work, and also the type of activity being done out in the highway. So in a water burst, the material you're working with will be in a completely different condition to what I work in terms of the gas sector. So as we start to collect all this information in terms of how the protocol is working for us all, again, we can feed this back into the environment agency on maybe some areas or some examples of work where we can't fully comply with either WM3 or Streetworks UK protocol. Well, that's for us to identify and feed back into the environment agency. And what I will say is over these last few years, especially since I've joined Streetworks UK 2.5 years ago, being able to work with the Streetworks UK members, the environment agency and the DFT directly in terms of educating people on how we work out in a highway and what regulation looks like and how we implement it. It's been fascinating for me to watch behind the scenes. And what we've created with this protocol is a joined up force now where we're all working together so that we can understand what the actual requirements are, but also make them practical as well, so we can actually achieve it out on site. So, as I say, this protocol is going to develop, and I believe it'll become better for us, but it's going to take some time and effort. So, next step for us is more engagement. I think the next Streetworks UK event is on the 12th of November, the Streetworks conference in Birmingham. There'll be sessions on throughout the day there talking around Streetworks UK protocol as well. So if you're there, please feel free to come along, and we can have some questions and answers, some open sessions that we've got there. And then there'll be further webinars just to see how we're getting on in terms of how is it actually feeling in the real world now in terms of implementations in there. 6 months time, what's it all looking for us? So that's it from me in terms of what's next. I think we've got time for Q&A, so I'll pass back over to Katie.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to all three of you. That was really insightful, and it sounds like a real significant change that's going to impact a lot of different people, companies, things. So great. Thank you. Have we got any questions from the people who've joined at all? Do you want to drop them in the chat if anybody does have any questions? I'll wait for them to come through because we've got a couple of questions here. So this one's for, I guess, for yourself, Mark. So this is an industry first. What was the go live day actually like on Wednesday?
Yeah, so it was strange, to be honest. I built myself up to block my calendar out for it, first of all. And I wasn't just working on behalf of Cadent on that day, I was working on behalf of the industry as well. So Streetworks UK, all the members, engaging with me on a daily basis on the build up to it. So I blocked my calendar out and was just sat monitoring the phone and my emails all day. And to be fair, touch wood, it was quite calm. I was expecting a lot of communication coming in, but we didn't have that much coming in. We've had a few calls in around educating a few waste receiving sites in terms of what the classification is. So the site assessment classifies material now, not a test result. So a few waste receiving sites didn't quite understand that. But again, the EA provides a nice letter to provide to those to make them aware of what the protocol is and how it should be used. And then, yeah, as I say, just responding to queries that were coming in. But it was general queries around ways of working more than the protocol itself. So it was examples of, I'm on site doing this now, what should I do? So, yeah, it's been interesting and it's been enjoyable, to be fair. I'm glad it's out of the way in terms of that first day.
Yes, yeah.
So we did, it was more exciting for me, Mark, because we had 6 clients who were all ready to go live with us on that day. And the set of clients were, ones that had established a relationship with us for a while, but also we had clients who turned up kind of 2 days or 3 days in advance going, oh, we didn't know this was happening, and how do we actually try and get ourselves on track? And we were able to onboard those clients, and I think that's some of the power of digitization. And because we have the links to Street Manager directly, and so on and so forth, so it was really quite fulfilling that we had a digitized workflow system that was able to bring in people who just got in touch about 2 or 3 days in advance. And so the message is, if you really and your organizations are looking for people to be able to get you compliant as quickly as possible, then the digitization is a good way of doing that, and we've got that for you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to both of you for that. So I guess another question from me is that it sounds like this classification is likely to evolve over time as well, as you begin to learn more about the data that's being collected and things. How can companies avoid being locked into short-term fixes that just won't last?
It's a difficult one to answer that because, as we mentioned there, the protocol will definitely develop, and it's in our hands how it develops. Being open and honest and engaging with the Environment Agency, DFT, and Streetways UK will steer how it develops. So it's in our hands how it will progress and transform. On the data activities of coming up with issues, it's difficult not to jump into a scenario and then think I need to do something around this, because they're still learning what the protocol actually is. So as I mentioned, we've had a few phone calls this week around certain scenarios, and it's not a case of having to be fully compliant with that scenario this minute, because we need to educate the Environment Agency on a certain issue. So as a typical example, VACX is, they were brought in to try and reduce the amount of vehicle loads going across the country, reducing carbon footprint. At the moment, VACX it's really difficult to use them with the protocol. So rather than just trying to put a solution in place now for day one for that scenario working, we need to be able to gather the evidence and share that with the Environment Agency and come up with a solution. In terms of digital systems as well, as Vince mentioned there, now in Scoop, we've got a standardized approach in terms of how we capture data, how it flows through end to end. What is different for Cadent is all our systems behind the scenes are hard coded in terms of how we operate. So it's how do we get that data that we currently capture into Scoop in the correct way. So we don't want to go changing all our own IT systems, because that's really costly and they support other functions of the business, not just Streetworks. So it's making sure we think ahead of using that data in the correct format that suits the business and blend it into something like a Scoop product, then that displays it in another format for us. So I don't know if you want to add anything on that, Vince.
So I think the other thing that we're looking is how digitization can help as well. So I think Mark mentioned earlier about pack testing and litmus testing being a way of doing more rapid testing. Now we are coming to a world now where the ability of using our mobile devices to be able to identify potential hazardous waste and of the soil that has been the spoil that has been dug out is getting nearer and nearer, because you can use different approaches to be able to identify the soil quality, or whether the soil is stained, and so on and so forth. So we're starting to trial those potential techniques that can help in streamlining the actual site assessment processes. So we've got a full kind of roadmap for how to digitize the site assessment process as well, and we'll be able to compare that with the results that are coming out both from the site assessment outcomes as well as the lab results, so that we can get to a point where we can go, we're now confident in this digital approach of doing things. So it's a three-prong approach to be able to get to the right solution, and the ultimate goal is how do we actually get the throughput of works that we need in utilities as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible.
Does anybody else have any questions? I know I've asked a couple already, but anybody else got anything? I don't mind if you come off speaker or drop it in the chat at all. No? Oh, I've just seen Ali has just put no questions, but thank you to the panel for talking through this really useful overviews. There you go. Thank you very much to you three. And just a final thought from me is, how do the people that are on this call and whoever else watches this webinar later, how do they get in touch if they need to know more information? Because obviously this is impacting so many different companies.
From a Streetworks UK perspective, the usual email address is info@streetworks.org.uk. So any questions or queries, just send them into them, or if you want to email me direct, then feel free to do so. And as I say, we'll be at the roadshow on the 12th of November there for any in-person, face-to-face questions. From a Scube products.
So from a Scube perspective, you can come direct through to us. If you come to our website, there's a contact form on there, and you can arrange a demo. You can simply type material classification solution into Google, and you will get a Scube coming up on that result returned to you, or reach out directly to me or Vince through LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. If there's no more questions, then just want to say big thank you to everybody who came today. Really, really appreciate it. If you do want to get any more information, then like the guys have said, just reach out either through the Institute of Water as well. You can contact us through that. My name's Katie McGinn again. And yes, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your days. Speak soon.